Welcome to the Indian Gaming Association's The New Normal webcast. My name is Lisa Johnson. I'm the conference manager for the Indian Gaming Trade Show and Convention. It is my pleasure to introduce Victor Rocha, conference chairman of the Indian Gaming Association.
Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to The New Normal, your go-to source for insightful discussions on the gaming industry and critical issues affecting Native American tribes across the United States. I'm Victor Rocha, and joining me is my co-host, Jason Giles, Executive Director of the Indian Gaming Association. Today, we're honored to welcome Chris Cylke, Senior Vice President of Government Relations at the American Gaming Association. Chris plays a pivotal role in advocating for the interests of the gaming industry at both the federal and state levels. Chris, welcome. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm well. Very glad to be with you, both you gentlemen, today.
Everybody wants to know, with the last name like Cylke, what tribe are you from? You're definitely Native American. Right, Jason?
I'm a mutt. I will say I do have California roots. Before I was transplanted to the East Coast, my dad took a job with the government. I was born in the LA area, spent the first couple of years of my life there. And so I'm a recovering Californian to some degree.
You never recover, man. You never recover.
Kind of grew up in the DC area. In fact, every time I see Jason, I kind of remember playing high school football in Arlington, Virginia, against Langley High School, and I was a free safety, and I think his brother, left skid marks on me as he ran me over. Wow. Trying to tackle him. But that's not why we're here today. But anyhow.
I'm interested. I was like going, okay, the more I find out about Jason and his family, the more it just goes deeper. It never ends. It's fascinating stuff. So, Jason, I think one day we're going to have just a webinar on you too. So, but let's talk about what's going on. Chris, as you've seen, this is the third part of a series of videos to talk about, illegal gambling in California under the name of Sweepstakes gambling. Last week we had Jason Kuden from the Sports Betting Alliance. And, we just felt that, first of all, I think we got to give credit where credit's due. I just was really awakened to this threat, but, you've been leading this thing for a while now. When did you learn that this was becoming the ominous threat that it is?
Yeah, no, it's been interesting because I've been at AGA now for a little over 7 years, and I think illegal, unregulated gambling has always been an area of focus for the association. It's kind of taken different iterations. I think when I first got here, we were kind of on the back end of fighting some of the internet sweepstakes cafes, which many have likened to kind of a brick and mortar version of what's going on today. Certainly we had looked at the level of illegal gambling that was happening in sports betting space as kind of a public policy argument for the legalization of sports betting. But it's been, our focus on illegal gambling has kind of been a little bit sporadic in terms of how much attention we give to it. And I think, just several years ago, we realized that we needed to have sort of a full-time focus on illegal and unregulated gambling. It's a problem that's been here long before the AGA was here. It's not going to be going away, but it is something that's it has major ramifications for the industry beyond just the economic ones. And so we've been banging the drum mostly on illegal or unregulated skill games and illegal offshore websites. But as we've kind of dug into that and seen the marketplace continue to evolve in some of those areas, we've certainly seen now kind of a wave of different challenges that have kind of been predicated on, hey, we're not gambling. We're going to pretend like the laws and regulations don't apply to us because we found some legal loophole somewhere, and we're going to kind of try to make a rocket ship here and go get in as many states as we can, or get our product out as quickly as we can. And so it's been a challenge kind of dealing with that in real time as we've kept our eye on kind of the larger issue of illegal and unregulated gambling, and certainly having some of these entities now that have investment and are able to hire reputable attorneys to make their arguments on their behalf, hire lobbyists in some of these state capitals, and I'm thinking specifically of the skill game companies and what they've been able to try to accomplish in terms of turning themselves from an industry that was completely unregulated into one where they want to have some fig leaf regulations and tax rate and are arguing that they're critical to the future of small businesses in those states. So it's been a interesting ride over the past couple of years, and I think one of the big takeaways for us has been that we're just going to have to stay vigilant on illegal and unregulated gambling because it's always going to be around. And so I know when Bill talks about it, he says if responsible gaming is issue number one, illegal gambling is issue 1A for the association. Those are always going to be two of the areas that we're very focused on. And frankly, there's some, I think, intersection between illegal and unregulated gambling and issues like RG and some of the other important things that we talk about, anti-money laundering, consumer protection. There's a common thread there, so it just makes sense for us to always have, I think, an eye and a foot in this space. And it's been a good experience, I think, really engaging a lot of the various stakeholders who do have a role in, I think, in solving or getting a better handle on this. And I'm thinking of not only state gaming regulators but attorneys general, law enforcement agencies, both at the state and federal level, and really getting some of these entities to communicate better amongst themselves, because I think there has been kind of a siloing effect in some instances. And so I'm not completely satisfied where we are right now. There's more progress to be made, but I think we're certainly getting there, and I think it's been encouraging to see, particularly on some of these newer challenges, kind of the coalescing of all different segments of our membership, which includes commercial operators, tribal operators, suppliers, and others. And so I don't think there's much daylight between our core members in terms of how we should approach this issue.
You mentioned coalescing, and I was late to the game, but you've been really at the tip of the spear on this thing, and tell us about your memo. I've read it. I think you guys put this out at the beginning of the summer, and it made a lot of waves. But even then, I didn't realize. I knew the risk of skill games. I read that every single day, and I think we were kind of inoculated in a sense to this threat by the ads on our phone, the ads on Facebook, the ads on Instagram or TikTok or all the social media. And, it all looks mindless and simple and stuff like that, but that doesn't seem to be the case. You know what I mean? So tell us about your memo.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think it kind of came together as a result of some of our other efforts in working with, the state of Michigan on some of the offshore websites and talking to them and educating them, and then just really keeping a tab on what they had been doing there. And we saw that they had sent a cease and desist letter to one of these sweepstakes businesses, which really hadn't been on our radar up to that point, and started digging in on exactly what those are, how they operated, saw some articles in terms of some of the folks involved and that they're making real money off of this, and started getting a little bit of drips and drabs in terms of hearing from our members about, hey, this would really be something that you guys should take a look at. And so, maybe mid-spring, we started saying, well, I think, at the very least, we can recommend that this is a growing segment that deserves a little bit more scrutiny from regulators and from others. And so let's put together a memo and see whether our diverse, different segments of membership are behind this. And we put it together and as we always do, and tried to have a pretty transparent and inclusive process. Got some feedback on the memo, but I think, what we found was that, as I mentioned, there was just really strong support from from our tribal members, from our commercial members, and even from our suppliers in terms of AGA putting this out. It wasn't initially supposed to be something that we were going to make public. So we did share that with state attorneys general and regulators back in the late spring. But then it became public, I think in August or somewhere around then, and I think it's been a good kind of reference for framing the discussion that we're having. And certainly there's more information that's come out since, and certainly covered on your Twitter feed and Dan Wallach's Twitter feed and others. And so we may have to do a memo 2.0 to kind of parse through some of the details that continue to come out here. But we felt it was an important first step to really raise some questions about what's happening here, and ultimately, I think the approach that the memo takes is that this is going to be up to regulators to look at and determine whether or not there's anything. There's nothing to see here. This is illegal gambling, and some have looked at it and I think have made the latter determination. So again, a situation where I think we like the progress we've made. We like the conversations that we've been having as a result of this memo. But, there's still a long way to go in terms of fully, I wouldn't say prosecuting, but fully getting to the bottom of this issue.
I like the word prosecuting. I like that word.
Yeah. I mean, Chris, unless we start to get some real teeth involved in this, cease and desist letters are good. But I'm a little bit surprised to hear you say, that because it looks a little bit like whack-a-mole. And you even had the state of Virginia just right across the river there, say skill games are illegal, but yet they're proliferating around the state of Virginia in just, little truck stops and bars and places, and they haven't done anything about it. And, I don't know if that means, it just seems like it's going to be a tough lift to go to all 50 states and explain the importance of stopping this. I mean, is there anything, I guess we could turn to the feds and just something coming from top down, but, with regards to gambling, the government, Supreme Court, we're kind of letting this thing roll out state by state. And, so it just is, I'm surprised there's not more frustration, because even in Michigan, you could still do it, right? You could still play free games there. I mean, they haven't really, stopped it, if you will. It's going to take something more than cease and desist letters.
No, I completely agree. I think we take the progress and the victories where we can get it. We've certainly been pushing on the federal level and for more robust kind of action from the Department of Justice and the FBI and others in terms of investigating, and now I can say prosecuting, Victor, some of these bad actors. Obviously they have a lot of different priorities, and
Right.
we've worked with Congress to try to elevate this as one that is cared about in the nation's capital. I think one of the disadvantages we have in terms of the way that DOJ and some of these other law enforcement groups operate is they're not going to, a lot of the conversations we have are going to be one way with them. We're going to be telling them what we, think about some of these threats, giving them as much information. They're not necessarily saying, hey, we just wanted to let you know we're building this case. And so I think there's always some hope that the ball is already rolling in some of these instances. But we certainly need to keep the heat on at the federal level in terms of, getting better policy when it comes to some of these illegal gambling entities or unregulated gambling entities, and also making that a priority for them to prosecute. And I do think that while there hasn't been a lot of movement at the federal level, having kind of the states involved in the cease and desist, whether it be with Bovada and some of the offshores, or more recently when it comes to some of these sweeps entities, that is something that will have potentially immediate value in that jurisdiction, but also has kind of collective value when we're making the case at the federal level that, hey, 5 different states have looked at this, or in the case of Bovada, 11 different states have looked at this and issued cease and desist letters to this offshore company. Isn't it more efficient for DOJ to do something than expecting for state gaming regulators to engage in a epic game of whack-a-mole and trying to go after all these different threats that exist?
And it makes it harder. These
Jesse.
guys from Australia, when they're foreign companies coming over, your reach is more limited on a state level. So I'll just say that, because for years, Wisconsin tribes and California tribes primarily have been complaining about, those games at pubs and also in California at the card rooms and everything. And, attorney general after attorney general, they just have either bigger fish to fry or don't care. We couldn't even get Kamala Harris to care. So, it's a tough deal. And then of course the turnover itself, within state positions, and then you have to start all over again and educate a new attorney general.
Well, we won't get into that, but there's certainly something within the next week that's going to create some churn in our government. And I will not get into any politics on this, but I will say at the federal level, that will certainly present an opportunity, regardless of the outcome, to have a bit of a reset and a re-education of a new administration, new people in. And I think we can only continue to be optimistic that we're going to be making progress. And I do think that, having the AGA and IGA on the same page, and the California tribes on the same page, and speaking from the same kind of song sheet when it comes to these issues will be, impactful in the next Congress and in the next administration, and whoever ends up being attorney general and in some of these other roles, which I don't even think the Federal Trade Commission, which is supposed to have regulatory power over sweepstakes and has taken some action against, some of these sweepstakes games that have involved other types of business verticals and have been abused or have been just outright scams. I don't think they have any clue what's going on in terms of sweepstakes casinos that are out there right now, or sports books.
That's part of the problem. An attorney general usually is looking at a higher office and to try to get them to focus on something like, because it's presented as harmless. Like, who the heck is really doing this? A lot of it is boring. I get that, a person that would download a free game and sit there and play for nothing, it's a little weird. But then when you show them, well, it's not nothing, eventually they can get to this level of cash prizes. It still doesn't rise. I mean, we've just seen it over and over in Wisconsin and California. And even the ones that give you lip service, Victor, out there in California, okay, we're going to do something about it. They never really get around to it. I mean, then you look at Virginia, you have an AG more concerned with, the voters there approved legalization of marijuana like 4 years ago, and all they focus on is preventing its rollout. And meanwhile, they have all these illegal machines, especially around the Norfolk area. So it's really just I don't know how you get it to a level of up where it's, and that's what we're waiting for, Chris. That's the real problem. Is it going to take a huge scandal? Is there going to have to be some massive scandal, and then all of a sudden the feds are going to, get involved, and that's not what we want. That's never served Indian country well at all, because most of the time the scandal had nothing to do with Indian gaming, but yet they're willing to bring the hammer down on all gaming. So it's a fraught deal, and I think politics is definitely involved, because it just doesn't rise to the level of, in Louisiana, the guy putting up the 10 commandments and that's more important to him than stopping illegal gambling. And you can just go down, because those are show issues and show things that raises their profile. Cracking down on somebody with a goofy game on their phone, I don't know, until we can show that, it is a threat. And that's why I'm glad the AGA and the commercial guys are really kind of getting behind this, because like you said, Victor, once it's out there, went the way DraftKings and FanDuel did it at the beginning, just saturation. And then all of a sudden saturation led to acceptance. And then all of a sudden, You
like
get
like
this-
you know they
yeah. So-
they're the first to admit it, you know what I mean? So the template is there. We understand, when they started bragging to the analysts on Wall Street, it's like, we're going to be bigger than FanDuel and DraftKings in several years because we're in California, because we're in Texas. You're starting to see a change. I think all these lawsuits against Bovada are important. You see, this one just happened in Massachusetts against DFS 2.0, which is important. And if you look at that one, the guy is saying, listen, not only are we going to sue you, but we're going to do a clawback for all the money that went to the taxpayers and stuff like that. So you're starting to see a waking up, but I think what we can do is at least do it in California where it really matters. Take the wind out of them. If you stop them in California, I think that will be really detrimental to them across the country and probably the world. So I think that's something that we can do. Already there is, oh my gosh, my phone DMs are just blowing up. I'm talking on the phone. Yeah, I know.
I'm not looking at mine.
Yeah. So, people are aware. I think again, a part of it was the fact it just seems so innocuous. It just seems so it's everywhere. So it can't be a threat, but then you start seeing the kind of money that they're talking about and you realize, okay, well, we have a problem here. And that's where, again, the AGA was ahead of this, and it's wonderful to see the industry coming behind you, Chris, and supporting you. And I know in California we're just starting to become aware of the magnitude of this issue, and the tribal leaders and the lawyers and everyone I'm talking to, they're activated, they're aware, they're alert, and it's just a matter of time before we're on top of this thing too. So,
Yeah, because Chris, I mean, unfortunately, there's bad example. Like, I guess we just gave up on those claw machines that they build as skill games where you maneuver the claw and it drops down and you get a prize. I mean, that thing is, and it's everywhere. It's in every Dave and Buster's. It's at the movie theaters, and it's a scam. And nobody can just say, get that scam machine out of here, because it's basically a slot
it's
machine.
a carnival game. That's the same as a midway game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
but they're everywhere, Victor. No one even cares anymore because I guess again, it's harmless, this and that, but it's
At least those things have a little bit more of a colorable claim as a game of skill than some of the more recent ones that we've seen that are just a slot machine with, an optional puzzle that nobody plays and is a, clear Rube Goldberg to get around the state gambling laws and in terms of, it's
right.
So yes, fuzzy claw machine may have been an issue at one time. Now it's the least of our worries. And in fact, states that are going to address this in some way are probably going to carve out the fuzzy, the claw machines and fuzzy animal games, just to be clear. But I think that, that is part of the challenge here, is that we are dealing, both federally to some degree, but certainly at the state level with laws that are, were written a long time ago, very antiquated, and you've just had decades for people to kind of look at, how can we, under the auspices of innovation, which is really just circumvention of the law, how can we design a product that will give consumers the same feel as gambling, but that we can credibly claim is, not gambling. And, we'll hire the best lawyers to defend our side, and lobbyists, and, we'll get some investment money to come in to, and
come into California. Oh boy.
Yeah. Well, I do think, what you guys are doing in California is important. And we've seen, whether it be the Bovada cease and desist letters, or I think regulatory interest and scrutiny on this, that there is a real kind of neighboring effect that occurs when it comes to enforcement. Sometimes the detriment of the regulated industry ourselves, but I think in this case it works in our favor, so that regulators and other enforcers are likely to look at what their peers are doing and be more inclined to provide some scrutiny and potentially some enforcement action once the ball kind of gets rolling. And we've seen that happen on Bovada. We've seen that in the DFS 2.0 space, and I think we'll see something similar when it sweepstakes casinos as well.
Yeah, you know what? I mean, I just see something like a Black Friday happening again. I think you're going to have something just big, a big legal statement like that that's just going to, you know, devastate the industry. And I think, you know, California will definitely going to be leading it. One of the things when you talk to these operators, as a matter of fact, they put out a new rules or another thing today where they're talking about their whole thing is like, you know, majority of our customers don't play, they play for free. All these rules, they say they're following the KYC responsible gaming measures. How do you view these arguments? You know, where and how do they fall short for you, Chris?
I think, well, I think you have to go back to sort of the initial argument that's been made that I think is we got this to the extent we did get pushback when we were looking at this issue. This was sort of the line that we heard was, hey, sweepstakes are a well-established area of the law. They've been used for decades for promotional, purposes. McDonald's, Ed McMahon, Starbucks is doing it. Everyone's doing it. Nothing to see here. We have all these legal opinions that have been developed by the finest lawyers that show that we're just we're innovating here, and I think what we found is that while that may be the case that Ed McMahon and McDonald's are on solid legal footing, when it comes to actually applying this sweepstakes model to online casino gaming, it's murky at best. And I think that was revealed, or a fine point was put on that when I had individual conversations with some of our member companies who are in the regulated space, and they said, we're pragmatic business people, and if sweepstakes gaming was as clear cut as it's been laid out by those who are involved in it, we would probably be in that vertical. But we did a legal analysis. We looked at this and we said, it's not worth putting our gaming licenses at risk to get involved in this emerging vertical. And so I think that was really instructive in terms of how we view this. To the extent that people are in this space are hanging their hats on, all the good things that they're doing, that's great. We can take them at their word for that. It's basically done on the honor system because there's no regulators that I'm aware of who are actively looking to enforce those standards. And at the end of the day, regulation is not meant for the good guys that are out there, right? I mean, there's a presumption that people are going to be honest and good, but the regulatory structures are there in order to catch the people who are not doing these things. So, I'm glad that some of the folks who are involved in this new association and can make these kind of self-regulatory commitments. We have a lot of self-regulatory commitments that we make on top of those that we already abide by, that are enforced by gaming regulators. But I don't. There's a much larger universe of people in this space that are out there that may or may not be as committed to enforcing those kind of things. And so I think, whether it's regulation by proxy that, we're working with the best companies, they're regulated. And so, we're regulated de facto. I mean, when you apply some of these arguments in other contexts, it almost sounds, ridiculous. I did a renovation on my house a couple of years ago, and I'd love to go to my county and say, well, I'm working with the best contractor. He's only got licensed subs that he's doing. And so I'm not going to apply for a building permit, and you're not going to do inspections or any of that stuff. We're good. I don't think that holds up in that context. I don't think it certainly doesn't hold up when it comes to online gaming or anything with regard to the gaming industry. So I think that's, a pretty thin argument as well.
Yeah, and the other one that we hear is that we're stifling innovation. And like I told Jeremy last week, when when these guys come into California and tell us they're innovating, it resonates like the word a manifest destiny. You know what I mean? We're innovating, and we're innovating in your yard. And by the way, don't bother us. We're over here innovating. You know what I mean? And so it just doesn't really fly. Now, what do you think of that argument?
Listen, I mean, I think it's an interesting one. We've heard this a lot in other contexts where, it's certainly in the skill game one, like, oh, this is just the regulated gaming industry who's doing great, and they're trying to, cut off competition from other new innovative verticals. I think it's going back to my note about the conversations I had with some of our members. Like, if this was clear cut, we'd be involved in this space, or that's what they've said. It's not clear cut. The only way that some of these companies can get into this is because they don't have really any skin in the game. They don't have any risk. They don't have any gaming licenses that would be, put at risk by getting into this, and they're, well capitalized in the process. So if anything, I think, the kind of asymmetry when it comes to competition is the fact that these folks sit in one space where they really have nothing to lose from a business and regulatory perspective, whereas the regulated industry is not going to be able to take risks that would, potentially put other parts of their business in jeopardy. And so, what I've said is really what the goal here is clarity. And I think there's a desire among some in the industry, or most in the industry, for the clarity that comes out of this to say that these are, illegal gambling entities and that they should be reined in. But even if the determination is that these things are on the up and up, at least that will give folks in California, being the tribes or commercial operators, it will let you know where you stand, and make a informed decision on whether you want to get involved in this space, whether you want to go and change the law to make it clear that this is just all a ruse. It will give you options, and I think where we are right now, there's a lack of clarity, and notwithstanding people telling you, oh, everything's crystal clear, everything's great. I think that's the main goal here, is getting clarity and getting legal certainty, so that businesses can make informed decisions about what the future looks like, from their own business perspective, but also, from a advocacy perspective of where we need to change the laws and change regulations.
Go ahead, Jason.
Well, looking down the road, I mean, the SAFE Act, we asked some folks on the show last week whether they
I saw Jeremy deferred to us on that, so I figured I'd be getting that.
I'm sure you guys are looking at it. I think it's a good piece of legislation. I don't know if the voluntary aspects of it are going to play out, but what do you think about the feds coming in and doing some of the things you just mentioned, just a standard and getting some clarity on this? I guess the main problem is, Chris, I talked about like the pubs in Wisconsin and the card rooms, and those are localized instances of what we consider illegal gambling. But with the phone, now everyone has a phone. It just can go cross country really quickly. And so you almost have to stop it before it even starts. And is a SAFE Act something that can get us there, maybe in the long run?
Yeah, no, I think if there's one thing that I can say positive about the Safe Bet Act, I think that it does provide an opportunity for us to continue to have this conversation at the federal level in terms of the acute need for more federal involvement when it comes to issues like illegal and unregulated gambling. I think the approach, and the AGA has been, pretty clear in our opposition to the Safe Bet Act. It kind of tries to put the toothpaste back in the tube in terms of what's happened over the past 6 years, and in making states and tribes who have made very thoughtful decisions around what legal sports betting is going to look like within their jurisdictions, making them go back and ask, justify their existence to the Department of Justice, who, when you look at it, we've been asking the Justice Department to actually do the job that they currently have on paper, which is enforcing against the illegal market. Do we really want them regulating a otherwise, industry that's otherwise regulated at the state and tribal level historically? I think a lot of the elements of the Safe Bet Act are also, worthy of having discussion around, but I think that a lot of the presumptions that have kind of underlied the pieces of the bill are off. And I'm thinking in terms of the approach on advertising, the approach on artificial intelligence. Certainly we've had discussions with the proponents of those bills around those. I think the more education that we can do to kind of tell them what we're doing as an industry and how we're approaching issues like AI, where I think their presumption is that it's going to be used for evil by the gaming industry, when 2 weeks ago at G2E, there were probably 12 to 15 panels on AI and what a promising tool it would be in the responsible gaming space. So I think there's an opportunity for more discussion and collaboration, but I don't know that specific piece of legislation is going to get us anywhere, and we have some serious concerns with that. But I do think, going back to our initial point of discussion, we do have to look for, I think, opportunities federally to get them more involved, whether it be legislative or just on the enforcement side on this, because, states are an important player in this. And if you guys can get California to shut this down, I think that will be great, and that will have a real impact on the overall market. But it's really inefficient for the gaming industry to have to go jurisdiction by jurisdiction to get a handle on something that is, clearly the feds would have an easier role in curbing and should have a bigger role in enforcing.
Well, as Native Americans, we're always a little hesitant to hand over any control to the feds. From our experience, it's never been very good. That's interesting because it's like, Blumenthal has really been Senator Blumenthal from Connecticut has always really been anti-gaming. I know with the tribes, he's always been very adversarial and stuff like that. But I think we've learned is, I don't think any of these federal bills really are the answer. You know what I mean? I think it's a good conversation starter. I think in California, once we get going, once we start really put this thing in front of us, and especially after the election next week, I think we can all really get, I think all the signal to noise ratio will die down, and we can really start focusing on this. But in California, we're definitely going to be leading this. This is, if you look at the numbers that Chumba's talking about, if you look at the numbers that Fliff is talking about, they're getting close to $1 billion, or they will be really soon. It's growing exponentially. And that's, we as the California tribes, me as a tribal member from California, we were just shocked at the magnitude of this theft, so what are the opportunities for collaboration? I think you guys have done a great job in leading this. We're new to this. How can we help you? What can we do to make ourselves stronger going forward as an industry?
No, this is, well, unfortunately, this is not an issue that's going to be going away, whether it's, sweeps or just illegal gambling and unregulated gambling and testing the system. And so I think, having a kind of prolonged commitment in the future for collaboration between commercial, tribal, other interested parties, all of whom, are part of the AGA, but that we see at G2E every year as well. And making that a consistent push, I think is, we're halfway there when it comes to making some progress on these fronts. I do think that the education, for some of these policymakers, both at the state and federal level, is really important. My colleague Trace is probably a platinum member on American Airlines right now because of this year and all the different attorneys general conferences that he's gone to and other presenting before other groups, law enforcement, gaming regulators, et cetera. Keeping the pipeline of information flowing to them and really making sure that it's a two-way discussion, I think is really really critical. And I think also, a lot of these, and you talked about the kind of amount of money that some of these platforms are making, but I think one of the motivators for us, and certainly the financial impact on the industry of having these kind of unregulated competitors out there is part of the problem. But I think it's also the real reputational risks that this poses for the gaming sector, regulated gaming sector writ large, because we've seen some negative media attention on the regulated gaming sector, and I don't want to say lazy reporting, but certainly there's the media likes to conflate a lot of different things. And so if somebody on a college campus or a group of people on a college campus are involved in flip and lost their tuition money because they were, betting through that platform, the media is not going to take the time to, kind of parse through what happened, do a post-mortem on this and say, oh, well, that was a sweepstakes-based gaming sports betting platform, or, we ultimately are going to own that as the AGA and as the regulated industry. And so I think going back to kind of informing and educating, it's important to draw those distinctions and draw those lines between who we are as the regulated industry and who these folks are, so that when and if some of these bad things happen, we can assign blame as appropriate. And so those are just some initial thoughts in terms of how we can continue to work together. But certainly, I think there's a lot of opportunity outside of this issue, and I'm thinking about responsible gaming, which I mentioned earlier. That's an issue that touches every part of the regulated gaming industry. Anti-money laundering policy, I think that's only going to be a continued challenge as things continue to go online, as crypto and other forms of new payments are added to the mix. And I think anti-human trafficking as well is a real important issue that's touches commercial, tribal, a variety of other stakeholders. So I'm optimistic about the future. I've been at AGA for 7 years now, and I see how powerful it is when everybody's kind of rowing in the same direction, but it's not always easy to get there. And I don't even think the commercial versus tribal conflicts are even the most challenging ones. Sometimes it can be supplier versus commercial, or just commercial versus commercial, or whatever. But that's the nature of the beast. It's what makes I think working at the AGA and working at the industry fun, is that there's always some new challenge, and it's dynamic. And in this instance, I'm glad we're all working together.
It's kind of like having a large family of boys. They're always punching each other and pulling hair, and that, Jason, right?
Exactly. Can't even go to the grocery store with them. But
exactly.
What are you seeing from just other foreign markets? Do any other foreign markets have this problem? Whether it's
I think we have we've had a dialogue with some of our counterparts over in Europe and in the UK, and in fact just at G2E recently kind of inked a memo of understanding with them in terms of future collaboration on issues like responsible gaming, research, illegal gambling. But I think just reading about this, it's definitely a international, global challenge, that being illegal and unregulated gambling. I think it's been a little bit frustrating, and you give them a little bit of grace on this because our laws are different than the laws in Europe and in Australia. But certainly there's been a lot more aggressive use of site blocking and other kind of tools in order to cut off access to some of the entities that are clearly in their marketplace operating in a unregulated way. My hope is that we can kind of embarrass our own government into getting involved in some of these more aggressive tactics. But it's interesting even to see some of the newer markets that are coming online where they're already kind of I'm thinking of like Brazil, where they're already sort of saying this is how we're going to tackle this problem, and it involves tools that aren't used in the United States. So I think there's some hopefully some collaboration that we can do with our partners internationally, but there's also some best practices that we can put in front of some of the policymakers and law enforcement groups in this country to prompt them to do more as well. Since I don't know that I would say that we're on the front lines of kind of tackling this problem as a nation in the way that we should or have technological capability in order to do.
Chris, you talk about unregulated and when you have someone like Chumba that's coming in there, and even Bovada, they're saying, no, they just got a fine, and some of the media is saying, well, they're not even going to pay it. They're just going to keep on. But, you have bad actors within our industry who are licensed and regulated, who are now in this marketplace. What do we do about that? I mean, we don't have to go offshore to find these people. They're actually at the next table when we're having dinner in Las Vegas. You know what I mean? What do we do about that? In California, we're definitely looking at that. But I noticed in the lawsuit with Massachusetts, they're talking about clawbacks. So to me, I think there has to be some type of penalty when you have people who have gone and got licensed in Nevada, they're licensed in Atlantic City, and yet they're doing this illegal gambling in California. How should we address this issue?
That's a good question. I mean, I think we've been pretty clear, particularly in the kind of skill game context where we've kind of seen this come full circle where, these folks have come in completely unregulated, uninvited, established businesses, and then have gone full circle to, once somebody challenges them or there's some action taken, said, oh, we're the good guys, we want to be regulated. And we've been pretty clear that that's not a good model for entering into any kind of, regulated gaming, and that people who engage in those sort of paths towards regulated gaming or with that goal in mind should not be rewarded. And so, we've seen some jurisdictions that put in sort of the bad actor clauses, and I think that's probably a good thing. We've also seen some jurisdictions that I think they're looking a little bit more closely at who the regulated entities are within their market and what their business relationships look like, to make sure that they're not involved with people who are in gray markets or black markets. I think that's a healthy kind of development, but I don't know that there's a one single silver bullet towards that, other than continuing to kind of hold people accountable and make sure that those who are in the regulated gaming space are subject to the same high standards to get licensed and get involved in the industry in the first place, because I think that is ultimately a protection for our reputation as an industry. And we've seen that gaming, I think, has really come full circle in the past 10 to 15 years, where we've gone from an industry that was once viewed as taboo to now we do polling on a regular basis, and 9 in 10 Americans will tell you that gaming is a completely acceptable form of entertainment, and good for them, good for other people to engage in. But we don't take that lightly, and we've gotten there because there has been a commitment to responsibility and really bringing this from something that was maybe not so savory in the past to now a much more regulated environment. And so I think we need to keep our eyes on the ball when it comes to that being part of our story and part of our narrative, and using that where we can to keep the lesser than kind of regulated entities that present a lot of risks, keeping them kind of out of our space.
Yeah. Well, next week we have John Chowdhury, the head of former head of the NIGC, and we have a regulator from the commercial gaming industry coming in next week to talk about these very issues. So we're going to do a deeper dive into this, the regulatory aspects of this, and Chris, I think we've taken enough of your time. We've been here for 50 minutes. We appreciate it.
I can
Thank
talk
you
about this all day. So
Oh
I'm
man,
grateful
you're
you both
good.
to have me
There,
on. I don't want to take up any more time, but I do just one more plug. I do think this is a really critical issue for the gaming industry, and how these issues play out over the next couple of years. I think will have a fundamental impact about what this industry looks like decades from now, and so it's critically important that we get this right. And just are happy to be working with so many stakeholders from the various segments of the industry, and trying to tackle these challenges in real time as they come out. So I appreciate both of you and look forward to continued dialogue and continued collaboration. And I look forward to watching your continued series on this as well.
Yeah, with the new Congress coming in, we're going to have new faces and the committees will be shaken up. So I think next year we'll really push for some kind of hearing on this, and just to get it out there for the new Congress to know that there's illegal gambling going on in this country, and we need to get a hold of it because it's different than in the past. It could be on your phone. So
it's funny is that we're on next Wednesday, which is the day after election, Jason. So
you
think anybody will notice?
Yeah,
do you think we do? Yeah, I booked those guys. We might have to move it a week because I don't think anybody's gonna really notice anymore unless we get John to have to work without his shirt on or something like that. that
Right.
attractive male thing going on, or masculine. So listen, Chris, thank you so much. I still think with a name like Cylke, you might be Native American. You might want to check on that. But we appreciate it. And it is wonderful to see all the stakeholders pointed in the same directions with the same concerns. And this is just the beginning. And really, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate your leadership on
Thank you,
this.
Chris.
Yeah, thank you both. Great to be with you.
And see you guys next week after the election. Don't forget to vote. All right, everyone. Bye-bye.
Take care.